Hello and welcome to the construction update with the Richland School District. I'm Ed Dawson, news director at 610 KONA here in the Tri-Cities. Joining us today on the program is the superintendent of the Richland School District, Rick Schulte. Superintendent Schulte, thanks for joining us today.
Hi Ed, glad to be here.
Let's get into it. A lot to cover. It was a $98 million bond that was passed back in 2013 in the city of Richland, and a lot of projects, a part of that, 9 different projects that you were undertaking with the passage of this infusion of money. How are things going? It's been a couple years now.
They're going remarkably well, very fast, and we've got a lot of new schools open, and the kids are in there and they're enjoying it.
9 of the 11 projects, or 7 of the 9 projects rather, are completed, and only 2 are yet to be completed. Let's start with the 3 at the top, the oldest schools that were in the most need of replacement. Marcus Whitman, Lewis and Clark, and Sacagawea at the top of the list because they were in the most need.
They were the oldest schools. There were seismic problems there. They weren't strong against earthquakes. They were built in an open concept time period without walls and doors separating the schools, so they were in high need.
So when the designers got together, one of the thoughts was that these 3 were the oldest. They all need basically the same type of work to be done. So the design was, well, let's make them very similar, if not identical, in the blueprint form anyway.
Yes, that was the basic concept from the beginning. The 3 old schools there were all built to the same design, so we wanted to continue that process using the same design to replace them as well. So we did that.
Were there any challenges? Because not all 3 plots of land were the same, but you were going to put the same school in each of those locations.
Certainly the first decision we had to make for each one was where exactly on the site is the school going to be built. And that was a little bit of a challenge, especially for Marcus Whitman. The only good place for a school at Marcus Whitman is where the old school was. And so we had to tear that one down before we could put the new one on board. So that's why we had to relocate the Marcus Whitman students for a year.
Not only newer schools, nicer schools, all that, but bigger too than what you were replacing. So you have bigger facilities, I assume to accommodate the growing population, but there are other considerations too.
There are, that's right. Each of the new schools is about 65,000 square feet, and they're replacing 45,000 square feet schools. Part of that is to accommodate larger enrollment. So we have grown by about 2,000 students just since the bond passed in February of 2013. Another reason for it is we're having lower class sizes. We added full-day kindergarten, which doubled the number of kindergarten classrooms that we need. The schools qualified for extra state match money if we built larger schools. And we added a gym to every one of those elementary schools too. Previously they used the cafeteria as their gym, so a lot of reasons to have bigger schools.
You mentioned the state matching funds. That element was not necessarily built into the bond proposal, but it was kind of something off to the side, a very conservative view, because you didn't know if you were going to get that.
We expected to get about $30 million in state match. Instead, we're getting over $60 million in state match. And there were a number of reasons for that. One reason is that the legislature increased the area cost allowance, the cost per square foot. Another reason is that our enrollment grew faster. And so, I guess the last reason is because we just had good management, that we knew how to use the eligibility formulas in order to maximize our state match.
The growing population, the lower class sizes, and the things that you mentioned, one of the other elements nowadays, and is of top of mind to a lot of parents and the community at large, is making sure that those facilities are secure. And how much of that type of infrastructure was built into these new schools?
Well, safety and security was a high priority for the design of the schools. A lot of it's not very visible. The most visible thing is probably the controlled entrance. So there's a vestibule that requires somebody inside the school to press a button to release the door to allow you in. So that's the primary security. A secondary security is that every door has a remote control lock on it, so we can lock all the doors from the office. So we can lock down the school very quickly. In terms of lockdown, we also have a soundless, noiseless lockdown process, so there are flashing lights in every room that allows us both to lock down the door and then to reopen it again without having to get off of the intercom and announce to the whole world that the school is in lockdown.
Another facet is making sure that they're energy efficient. I imagine that simply by rebuilding and updating the three schools we mentioned, Whitman, Lewis and Clark, and Sacagawea, just because the times are different, you're going to have more energy efficient buildings. But Richland School District kind of took it a step further, making sure that everything was in place.
Absolutely, we did. The heating and ventilating system, of course, is the biggest contributor to energy efficiency, and the new units that we installed are rated at 95% efficient, and they replace units that were 65% efficient. We're using LED lights throughout, and LED lights, I think, as everybody knows these days, are far more efficient either than the fluorescent lights or the incandescent lights that they replace. So we're using those kinds of energy efficiency. We put the heating and ventilating units under the roof, under a sloped metal roof in the mezzanine, so they're easily accessed for maintenance and protected from the weather.
Aside from replacing those three older schools, some of the other projects, Orchard, as well as the HomeLink project, were some of the different things and also part of this bond.
Yes, and Orchard was an entirely new school to accommodate growth in that part of town. It's a 72,000 square foot school. It's a little bit larger than the others. It's a 1 story instead of 2 stories. And it was built by a different architect, but it's full. Even though it's only a year and a half old now, it's already full and operating at capacity.
And the HomeLink, that's another great part of this this list of projects.
Yes, and HomeLink serves about 600 students it's a parent partnership program. Those students were previously located in a rental facility in a neighborhood church. So we were able to bring this facility in. It's a factory constructed modular building, but it's on a permanent foundation with central hallways, restrooms inside, offices inside, even a multi-purpose room. It's an excellent building.
One of the challenges I would imagine when you're dealing with taxpayer money that people have entrusted the school district to use wisely is to make sure that you're not only at or even under budget, but that you're spending the taxpayers' dollars wisely. How does the school district go about formulating the plan to maximize each dollar?
One of the first things we did is that we hired a professional full-time project management firm whose business is building schools and being the owner's rep, not the architect or the contractor, but the owner's rep. So we have a full-time project manager to oversee all of the projects, as well as individual project managers at each school while they're under construction. The full-time project manager conducts things such as value engineering, where they have an independent architect look at the original architect's design to see if they are energy efficient and otherwise efficient in use of their building materials. They also conduct a constructability review to make sure that the blueprints and the other construction documents are well done and will allow for a contractor to do a good bid and to really build the school the way it was designed to be built.
Part of this massive project or list of projects under this large bond, not all of them are schools. Some of them are facilities. So let's head over to Fran Risch Stadium.
Sure.
And talk about what was done. I know that you probably wanted to do a little bit more, and maybe that's down the line. But what you were able to do with the bond money is to really update the visitors' side of the stands and the press box and coaches box.
Yes, we completely replaced everything on the visitor side. So we installed 2,000 visitor bleacher seats. We replaced the press room, the coaches boxes, the concession stand, the restrooms on the visitor side. It's really a first-class facility. In fact, in a smaller high school, that might be the home side. My understanding, it once was the home side in Richland. It's not any longer, but it's an excellent facility right now, and I think that seeing how good that is has led people to say, well, now it's time to start thinking about the home side.
Right. Well, you take care of your guests first. That's so nice and polite. Sometimes manners are lost these days. So you were taking care of the visitor side, and I've actually been up in the press box area for the first football game of the season up there when the Bombers were taking on Skyline, and it's a magnificent facility, just clean and spacious, and I know that that night the Skyline fans probably didn't enjoy the outcome too much, but I'm sure they enjoyed being able to stay in, sit and enjoy that visitor side field.
That kind of thing reflects on the community, and
Yes.
so when we have people coming from all the way across the state, like Skyline did, it's very important for us to show them the best of the Tri-Cities and the best of Richland.
One of the areas that I know was of high concern, aside from replacing the older schools, Chief Joseph Middle School was one that had some moving parts to it. Explain the challenges that the school district faced with that particular project.
Well, it's an older school. It's a flat roof. We wanted to install a state-of-the-art heating and ventilating system. We had to do it on a flat roof with a lot of penetrations to the building itself. It was a major project in order to do that. And we wanted to install a high-quality system that's going to last for a long time. So we used a 4-pipe system that incorporates separate systems for both heating and cooling. It's been in place now for 3 years, and it's working just the way we wanted it to work.
There were a number of issues that you were able to tackle. You mentioned some of them, but what you got as a result, as you can see in the video.
I think it's extended the life
Yeah.
of the school by quite a few years. So I think that the rest of the school will probably need modernization before the heating and ventilating system does.
Well, you'd like to hope so, right?
hope so. You
That's
bet.
for sure. Now we have a couple of projects that are still in progress, but are moving along really nicely. Let's start with Jefferson, well, before we get to Jefferson, let's talk about the new middle school.
Sure.
The brand new one that's needed for the growing community, right?
Yep. Yeah, this is we call it middle school number 4. It doesn't have a name yet. We have a principal and we have a planning team, and that's one of their challenges will be to name the new middle school. It's well under construction. It's out there in West Richland off of Keene Road. You'll see parts of the building. You can see the exterior looks exactly the way it's going to be when it's finished. Other parts, they're still putting up girders and steel and that sort of a thing. So a lot of people out there working, making significant progress, and it'll be open next August.
Are they starting to get some feedback or some consideration? I don't want you to spill the beans about what the school might be named or anything like that, but I imagine there's that's a big thing, for elementary, middle, high school, is the name of it is incredibly important.
Yeah, no, they haven't collected any names yet. They've just barely begun to form their committee. They're still recruiting parents to be part of that committee. So I'm sure that'll be one of the first things they do, along with choosing a mascot and school colors.
The other part, and maybe you can kind of expand on this, being superintendent of a school district, taking on a project like this, it's not just replacing old facilities, but you have a sense of growth too, like with the new middle school and the expansion of the population. That's got to give you a good feeling that that the future looks bright.
It certainly does, and we're looking ahead even the next 5 years. We expect to gain another 2,000 students in Richland. I think both Pasco and Kennewick school districts are growing at a similar pace, so I think new school construction is going to continue throughout our area for the foreseeable future. I think we could easily build a new school every year for the foreseeable future, and we may be doing that.
You may be doing that. So now let's talk about Jefferson. We have the new middle school that isn't quite done yet. Talk about where we are with the Jefferson project.
Jefferson is still in the design phase. We began with the same design that we used for the Lewis and Clark, Marcus Whitman, and Sacagawea schools. We're adapting it somewhat because of what we've learned from those schools, because some of the codes have changed a little bit. The location is different, but it's going to be very, very similar design to that. Same size, same classroom configuration, a little bit of a difference in the office area and the main entrance, but it's going to be very similar to those schools.
So many projects and a very large chunk of change that was approved. What were some of the bigger challenges from a broader sense that the district had to tackle? You couldn't do everything you wanted, although I'm sure you wanted to, but you're still doing a lot with this money. We really did pretty much most everything we wanted because we started with a set of educational specifications that I think were realistic. So we didn't go out there with a wish list of everything everybody wanted. We had something from the beginning that we knew was something we could accomplish and something we could achieve. From my perspective as superintendent, the biggest challenge was just doing so much so fast.
And luckily, we've been able to do that. As I mentioned last year, I think we opened 4 brand new schools all at the same time. Even just moving into those schools all over the summer was a challenge. Now that we're only doing 1 school a year, it feels like that's a good pace we can continue.
Probably a big difference, right? It almost feels slow, right?
Compared to what we were, we have 1 school in construction, we just moved into 1 school, and we have 1 school in design, and that's the way we'd like to probably keep it for the next few years.
Bottom line, you presented a plan, a very large wish list for this bond that was passed a couple of years ago. You get all your ducks in a row, but bottom line is you needed to convince the taxpayers that this was worthy of them paying higher taxes to pay for. And sometimes that is a very large hurdle, but the community responded.
I think people should be proud of the fact that we got maximum value for the dollars spent. And I think that the new schools and the attractiveness of the Richland schools will add to property values and the attractiveness of living in the Richland school area. So I think people are going to get their money's worth out of the schools.
And there, like you said, there's more to come, so stay tuned, as
they
say, right? Superintendent Rick Schulte of the Richland School District, thank you so much for joining us today.
You bet, thank you.
Coming up, more of our construction update program for the Richland School District. We'll talk with a principal and a teacher from one of those newly refurbished schools from Marcus Whitman. Stay with us. Welcome back to the construction update of the Richland School District. I'm Ed Dawson, News Director of 610 KONA Radio, joined this time by Brian Moore and Evan Newby. They are both with Marcus Whitman Elementary School, one of the projects, one of the 9 projects as part of this bond that we're updating the public on. And Marcus Whitman was one of the 3 oldest schools that was slated to be replaced, and both of you were in the old building, right? Well, let's start with you, Principal Moore. Give us a sense of what it was like in the old building.
There's some real big challenges with the old building. One was just the facility was really breaking apart. We kind of laugh, any rainstorm that we had, we literally were moving buckets around the hallways because we'd have rain pouring through. We had extension cords and power outages and real hard time keeping up with today's technology in the old building. It was designed in the 70s, which was an open floor model, which 6 classrooms shared the same space, which really did not meet the learning needs of today's learners and today's instruction. And just in a lot of ways, it wasn't an optimal learning environment for students, and it wasn't an optimal teaching environment for our staff as well.
Well, Evan Newby is a teacher at Whitman, and aside from the challenges and the nuisances, it was creating a learning problem for your students, I imagine.
Yes, it was. To add to that, when it would rain, my classroom library, I would actually have to move all of the books in my classroom because the rain would go in my classroom library as well. And just the technology aspect, we had cords running all through our classroom because it just wasn't set up for the 21st century. So kids would trip over the cords. You couldn't regulate the heating and cooling in the building. So one day it might be really cold, the next day it might be really warm. So that kind of affects the way that you're able to teach kids and kids learning. I
would imagine you were both watching the election returns very closely in 2013 when the bond did pass.
Yes. Yeah.
But even when the bond passed, there was the actual construction part, and to pull all this off, you guys had to kind of do a little bit of jockeying around, didn't you?
We did. We actually had to be moved to a temporary site for the year, and that had to do with some old flaws in the lot that we were on, and where an older school was buried at one point, and we wanted the optimal placement for our building. So that we had to be moved to the old Sacagawea building, which was across town, and all of our students were bused across town, and all of our staff commuted. And it posed a real big challenge. The nice thing is our staff they were so great in the 1 year. We made it a great year for kids, even though it was a hard year for all of us. We tried to minimize the impact on students and just make it a great year for students, but it was an interesting year to say the least.
From your perspective, not only for you, but your students having to commute each day for school, you were all together. The students knew you, knew the principal, and knew the other kids, but you were just in a strange building.
We were, and we also had a delayed start time.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a late start time, and then the kids got out later, so that affected the learning as well.
That's right. So once the year was complete and you made it all through virtually unscathed, right?
Yes.
And you have a brand new shiny building to call home. Were you probably one of the first to step inside?
Yes,
I would imagine, right?
yeah, and I was involved in the process throughout, so I had some looks even last year at it, and it's just been amazing. Even when I was involved with the construction and got to see the project halfway through last year, coming in this year, it was just amazing, and the building is just outstanding. And even, we were delayed a year. There were some improvements they made to Marcus from the previous schools, and we say we're very glad we got the best building, and it's the best building in the Tri-Cities area in lots of ways. And so the wait was worth it now that we made it through that year, and really the product we have, we could not be happier with the school that we
Absolutely.
have.
How prior to the school year were you able to take a tour of not only the building but your classroom?
We actually got to go the last day of school. We got to go and tour the building, and then we got to go set up our classrooms at the second week in August.
What was that like?
It was amazing. After I've taught at Marcus Whitman, this would be my 12th year. So we went 11 years in a building that you didn't have a classroom door. You had walls that were kind of put up many years after the school was built. So to go in and see, I have a classroom door. I have organization and storage in my classroom. I have a classroom that has a drinking fountain where kids have access to get water and they can wash their hands. Everything is just centered around learning and what's best for kids. So it's really exciting.
So it's not only conducive to what you need to do and the overall operation of a school, but it's a better learning environment for the students.
Yes.
And that's that's the bottom line too, isn't it? So you've been in the school a short time. School year started not that long ago. What has been the biggest, I don't want to say challenge, but adjustment that you've had to make from an administrative standpoint?
It's been very easy adjustments for us. Everything's been an improvement for us. Some of the biggest improvements, the things that have just instantly improved our day-to-day existence in the building, is one of the biggest things was we finally have a lunchroom that's separate than our gym, and we don't have to do our building scheduling around a conflict of our lunchroom and gym. We get to build a schedule around learning. It's also a beautiful space that our community is going to be able to use, and that our amazing gym facility that our community will use. That's been one of the biggest bonuses for us. A couple other things that have really stood out to us that we really just still amazed by. It's a safer building. We have a lot of safety features in this building. Like, for example, our other building, we had probably 20 to 25 exterior doors. And when school safety is at the top of the list these days, that makes it challenging when you have that many doors. And we really have secured entrances and a security vestibule, and even our evacuation travel paths have improved. So the safety of our school, it's a safer place for kids. Technology has just, we've been able to really work with the most update and greatest technology for kids, and just it's been outstanding. There really hasn't been one thing that we've been upset with. Everything has just been an instant upgrade for us.
Well, let's talk about the technology part of that, because although Whitman is not designated as a STEM school, the science and technology end of things is a very high priority. It's an emphasis at Whitman. Tell us a little bit about how that came about, because I know that you were a part of that.
Yes, a team of teachers over the summer went to a STEM Leadership Institute with our principal, Brian, and we just sort of came up with, well, last year we had a book study as well, and we were just kind of exploring STEM education. We know that kind of to create kids that are college and career ready, we need to be looking at those STEM careers and jobs and getting kids prepared for that job market. So we've been just looking at different ways that we can incorporate STEM learning experiences for our students. So we went for a week in the summer and kind of had time for a week to create an action plan. And we were able to come up with 3 different things that we were going to implement this year for STEM. So we created a STEM or STEAM Academy. So we have clubs that meet after school. And the STEAM, we're adding in the A to kind of foster that creativity with art and music as well. And then we have a room in our school. We're very, very lucky to have a STEM room and it's a second computer lab where every teacher in the school, doesn't matter if you're a kindergarten, first, second grade, third grade, fourth grade teacher, fifth grade teacher, you can go in and have a STEM lesson ready for you each week of the school year. So we were able to do that. And then we also have a STEM activity going home once a month for parents to get involved in their kids learning for STEM as well.
There are probably parents out there who get the STEM thing. It's it's a great thing, but boy, my kid's in third grade. We're not worried about him or her getting into the job market tomorrow. Why is STEM so important at the elementary level?
I think something that we've really noticed about our population, we have a higher poverty population, and a lot of our kids lack experiences that kids in different areas might get, like going to zoos or museums or going to science centers. So one of the things that we really wanted to provide for our students is a little bit of equal opportunity by really trying to provide an experience-rich science, technology, engineering, and math foundation, really to try to generate interest early so kids know, when Evan talked about college and career ready, I know they're only in third, but trying to generate some interest around that while they're young, so when they head into middle school and high school and through that path, that they already have an interest and some experience to really equalize the playing field for all students. And when they get to middle school, they're just going to be just as successful and energized about science, technology, and math as anyone else.
A lot of times in education, the first part of the phrase is, it's never too early to, and in this case, your students are going to be benefiting from this as well.
That's right. Yep, we just want to foster creativity and just kind of that divergent thinking among kids.
Talk a little bit about this project, your school, one of a list of a lot of improvements being made in the Richland School District. Thanks to not only the bond that passed, but some matching funds from the state, we're able to add a few little extras, square footage and in some cases, the overall package, not just your school, but from the school-wide, this is a tremendous undertaking that it seems like, by all accounts, just a great thing for everybody.
It really was, and the way that the funds were used, just everything, this was just a perfect project in my opinion. There's a lot of things too that don't make the front pages, like for example, we have a third floor mezzanine this year, and all of our HVAC, air conditioning and heating equipment is located in the third floor. And really, that doesn't make the front page a lot of the times, but these are things, the little things that were thought about in the way the money were used. All of our HVAC equipment is stored in a secure location out of the elements, where that equipment is usually going to have a 15-year life. By protecting it from the elements, we're going to extend that life. This is one of the most efficient schools that you'll find in the state of Washington. There's just so much that I could talk about on just little things behind the scenes that just make it, if it's not one of the best schools in the elementary schools in the state, I don't know what could beat it right now.
I would imagine, did you get a chance to offer your thoughts during the planning periods? I mean, you both have been in that school and knew firsthand what was needed. Were you able to present a wish list, and how much of that came to fruition?
We were involved right from the very beginning with the architects, but something that we had an advantage is because we were the last school built on the list, is that we were able to watch the other projects with Sacagawea and Lewis and Clark and learn a lot as they got into their school and make little adjustments as we went. So we really benefited. Even though it was a tough year to be moved to a temporary site, we really took advantage of that and made some changes to the building that are going to have a 40-year impact, not just a 1-year impact. So it's been a perfect project for us, and even though it was hard for a year, we really benefited from that. And it's a better school and better building. It's awesome.
Brian Moore, the principal of Marcus Whitman, as well as Evan Newby, the teacher at Whitman. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you for tuning in as well for this edition of a construction update for the Richland School District.